Greetings, my angels. Welcome back to Beyond the Sky Podcast. It is your host, Nathali Kabongo. I am back with another spooky tale to tell you guys today, and this scary story is happening in the UAE. To a young boy who's only 16 years old by the name of Andrew. Let's get this story started. Andrew was only 16 years old when this story took place. It was in 2011 in the month of December. Andrew was always a clever boy. He was always very smart and always believed that the paranormal existed because he did many research about it. And the reason why he would always do researches about it is because on his paternal side of the family, they were always able to connect with spirits and they always had a sixth sense to all that they do. One uncle of his was very gifted in the family. They called him the gifted medium. He was very gifted and he knew how to use his gift very wisely. However, Andrew and his brother never really inherited this specific special gift that his father's family had. Or so he thought, because he knew definitely, even though he wasn't extremely gifted like his uncle, he had the ability to sense and feel spirits around him. And so because he had this ability, ever since he was young, he always asked his uncle to do a specific cleansing on him because he did not want this gift to fully develop because he was a bit scared. But he never expected this gift of his to be reactivated as the time goes by. As the years started to go by, it was now 2011. It was now the month of December of that specific year. Andrew and his family, they moved away from the Philippines and they moved all the way to Dubai for his father's job, and he was trying his best to get used to it. After 4 days of settling into Dubai, he still had to get used to the hour change. His body still had to get used to it. So it was one Thursday morning. It was 4 a.m. in the morning. He was the only one up and he was using his laptop on the table watching a specific movie, and he had his headphones plugged in and he had his snack by his side, and so he was simply comfortable watching a movie in the living room as it was all dark and quiet. Andrew continued by explaining that if there's anyone familiar with Dubai, they lived in Jebel Ali. It's an estate called the Gardens, multiple residential buildings about 6 stories each, with each floor about 10 units, meaning that there is a long hallway once you get out of the elevator or when you reach the stairs. As Andrew was simply watching the movie, he heard a very loud scream coming from the hallway. He stopped. He looked around and placed his headphones to the side. At first, Andrew thought that it was the neighbor's kid playing around, since it was one of those screams that were coming from one end of the hallway to the other end of the hallway. And then he remembered the time. Who would be playing in the hallway at 4 in the morning? And before he even had more time to process the scream, it happened again. And so this time, Andrew, full of panic, decided to stand right behind his house front door. And as he stood in front of his front door, he was able to identify the kind of scream that it was. He was surprised to hear it was a scream of a little girl. However, now the scream was right outside his door. He could hear it. He could feel it. And so he didn't move. His mouth and his eyes were widened, full of shock. And this scream lasted for about 8 seconds in total. And after 8 seconds, the scream or the person started to move away from his door. Andrew started to think about his neighbors. The family next door had a child, of course, but that child was still a baby. So who could be possibly yelling like this at night? At the right side of his family's apartment was a fire exit, for they lived at the very end of the hallway. Andrew then continued by explaining that every floor and hallway, right after you exit the elevator, it has a double door. And there was a small window at the eye level, no handles, so you had to push it yourself. So during the day, these doors were actually opened, but during the nighttime, they were closed. One of the double doors was locked and the other one was still open, so the people can have access to their hallway. After this incident, the scream was gone. After the scream went away for a while, he was still perplexed, and so with shaky hands, he decided to open the front door and check the hallway. He only stuck his head outside to look, but nothing unusual. The lights were lit, the hallway doors were closed, no neighbors to be seen. And then when he turned to the right to check the fire exit, again, nothing unusual. So Andrew closed the door and decided to go to the kitchen to drink. The kitchen to the front door was only 6 feet away, so all you had to do was turn right. But before he could reach the kitchen, he heard the scream again. And now this time, it sounded as if it was coming from the entrance of the hallway, but was coming closer. Then he heard the thing stop in front of his family's door, and that sound, that little girl was screaming. Now this time, Andrew was truly panicked. He decided to go to bed. Even though he was still scared and panicked, he didn't even have the guts to close the laptop or even look behind him or look around. He kept uttering, "What the F, what the F, what the F." And then when he reached his bedroom, the shrieking of that little girl stopped. He never heard it again for the rest of the time that he was living there. But till this day, this freaks out Andrew the most.